Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Soul Goals Podcast. My name is Dawn. We are in year 3. I'm so excited for this year. We're going back to interviews with delightful souls, delightful people that I've met along the way. And what we're doing this year is attacking a subject each week. And these people that we have on are going to talk about their personal experience with that subject. And the goal for this year is to kind of open up our box of perspective, if you will, kind of think outside the box, maybe look a little bit outside of ourselves for something that we hadn't have seen before along that subject line that we're speaking of. And in a way to connect, obviously, because that's what this is all about, is connecting and finding relatability with other people, but also honoring the fact that, we can all expand our horizons and lessen our judgment and really find an acceptance of other people for the paths and the things that they think, while probably learning something along the way. So I'm very excited to have my guest Annalie on today. And Annalie is a late 20s business professional in her field. And I want to tell you, this is so random. We met through a mutual friend's book signing about 2 weeks ago. And we talked after the book signing was like completing, and I just looked at her. I was like, she's a very approachable person, just FYI. And I went, you remind me a lot of my daughter. So we just struck up a conversation. Annalie talked to me about her family and close knit family. You're originally from California, but you're currently living in the Franklin, Nashville area. Tight with your family. So there says a lot about you right there. And also, we got on the subject of dating. And now, I mean, what girl doesn't like to talk about about relationships? Like, we do that, right? It's what we do.
We do. And
Yeah,
it's so
yeah.
fun.
Yeah. So in that time period that I met her, like, we got on to talking about relationships, and I went, hey, I'd love for you to come on and speak about this subject this week. And the subject is dating, guys. Like, it's a big old mixed bag for so many people. And I really think that what you have to share today as a wonderful late 20s, sweet, endearing, and engaging young lady, that it'll be really insightful for a lot of us, and me in my 50s going, okay, so much different than it was when I was dating and the era that we are currently in. So many different things. So I'm excited to welcome you, Annalie, to the show today. Let's talk dating.
Let's
Yes?
do it. I'm
Oh,
so excited to be on here. It was so fun meeting you a couple weeks ago. I was like, you're such a light, so clear and articulate, and what a great mutual friend to have. Our friends here,
well, thank you.
incredible. But yes, so excited to talk about dating, and also can't wait to hear your experiences and stories, because I would love to look at them side by side, like back then and now, and just
Yeah.
see like what's different and like what can we do better? What are we learning? So
Oh,
I'm really
wow.
excited to sit and talk with you today about it.
Well, let's jump in. I think that's
Sure.
amazing. Yeah, I mean, just gonna tell you the correlations, the side by side, the snapshots of how it
Mhm.
is now versus how it was when I was dating. I mean, and I've got an almost 19-year-old and a 22-year-old, both daughters, and I'm just gonna tell you, the dating situation for both of them is so different, so
Mhm.
different. And I can see the trajectory even of the 3-4 year difference in them, of it changing a little bit too. So I think dating is constantly evolving. But from what my 22-year-old said, and from what you and I spoke about, this age that we're in of digital, fast moving kind of life is really affecting a lot of the way that young professionals and young people in general date. And we can even take that to the older spectrum too, but we're focusing on the 20s and young 30s at this point, and
Mhm.
how you approach dating right now, how you work through the different challenges with dating, and what you think would be different, what could be different, how you manage it, if you will. So I'd love for you to give me just a little snapshot of your dating experience to date, like in your 20s. How has it been? What does it look like for you? What's been your norm, if you will?
Yeah. I would say there's been a lot of short beginnings, in the sense that things start off and it's exciting and it's fun, but I feel like it doesn't last. And
Mm,
I would say that's been a very common theme, not just in my life, but also in my friendships, where my friends are saying the same thing, like, there's probably like not more than 3 dates, or like things start really well. And on both sides, it seems like there's an interest and then it doesn't last.
Hmm.
And I think it's been a lot of waiting. I really would love like a God-fearing man, and I think my standards are very high, and so I'm willing to wait and to be in a season that looks very different than a lot of other people, especially in the South. And in California, nobody gets married at 22 or anything
Right.
like that.
Right.
And
And do you mind us saying your age?
yes, I'm 28.
Okay. So at 28, I think you've had a good piece of time behind you in the dating era, in the dating landscape. So I think it's really interesting. Short beginnings. That's a really, I like that term because it makes so much sense for what you're talking about, you've experienced and your friends that you've said as well. Like having just a few dates, but nothing ever materializes from that. Do you, can you think about like what your feelings, what your opinions or your experience on why that's happening might be?
Yes, I think it's a mix of, I feel like a handful of times I realized this isn't probably going to last and it's probably not going to end in marriage. And that is the end goal is I'm dating for marriage. And I think that's something that a lot of people nowadays are missing is
Mm,
there's no final like destination as marriage. It's just kind of filling the void at times. So I wouldn't say this is necessarily happening in my life, but I hear in other dating relationships that people are lonely. And so they date just to fill the void of loneliness, knowing deep down that something isn't going to last. And so I think it's been half of me ending things. And then the other half is somebody's not ready. It's a situationship or a friendinationship, and
mm,
it can't last or it can't go anywhere because there's nothing clear about it. And so I think that's what's been frustrating in dating is wanting a long-term relationship, but it's just been a bunch of short beginnings.
yeah, dating for marriage is a really big deal, and I mean, that I think back when I was dating, we were not dating for marriage, but I think it was more closely aligned with that idea than maybe it is now. And I mean, if I'm looking at it honestly from a mom parent standpoint, I mean, I see so much social media interaction and so much social media interjection within the landscape of relationships that friendships as romantic relationships that can become a kind of an inhibitor for that kind of possibility moving forward, you know?
Yeah.
Like we're a microwave society. Like we want to know what it is, we want to do it, we want to move on and check that box and go, you
I
know?
couldn't agree more. I think it's very fast paced. I think a lot of times people also, I think Hollywood and like watching movies and like reality TV, I
Mm,
think it's done something where it's painted this picture of it has to go like this. You have to fall in love. Love at first sight is real. Like you have to feel all these feelings. And I think really good love and connection develops and it takes time. And I think
right.
it's slow. And I think that that's something our generation isn't great at is
Mhm.
forming a real authentic connection.
Right, or
So,
being patient enough
yes.
to last for the longer than the short beginnings that you're talking about, you
Yes.
know?
I'm curious, I wanna know, so you say you guys didn't date for marriage. Like, when you were dating, did you have, like, marriage in as the end goal, or were you just dating for fun? What did that look like for you?
So I think for the girls' standpoint, from me and my friends, like we would talk about, yeah, like we're gonna date because oh, this would be somebody that I could see myself marrying.
Mhm.
But I don't think our maturation process was in place to
Mhm.
go, yes, definitely. Like I don't think we had lived enough life. And I'm talking about the age of 17 to about 23, 24. So about a 5, 6, 7, 8 year swing right there. Now, I will say I met my husband when I was 24, got married, I'm sorry, 23, got married when I was 24. But I think interestingly, my first instinct was not, this has definitely got to end in marriage. It was more of there's a possibility. But
Mhm.
I think that the gals probably go more that mindset than the guys do. And maybe I'm totally wrong. What do you think about that?
I think girls think about that more than guys do. I think maybe that's even one area I slip up in. Girls get really excited, and I think especially when you're trying to be so careful dating, that is the end goal. So you don't want to go on a date with somebody if you know, like beforehand, like your values don't line up, and it maybe it's not going to end in marriage. And so, yeah, I think for girls though, they're definitely thinking like way further ahead in the future.
Yeah, and I think aligning, that's really great. I want to kind of go down that road of aligning values, because I think that's a really big thing that I see. It probably went away kind of from that middle ground, if you will, for a while. But I feel like, you correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like we're getting more back to that middle ground, that both men and women are fine tuning, that I want to find somebody that aligns with my values. And like my older daughter will talk about it. She's like, I have specifics that are non-negotiables, but I also have gray area too. But some of those non-negotiables for me are a value situation. Like we have to be aligned in these specific places. And I know she gets super frustrated a lot of times, because it's like, how, when do we find that person that clicks those specific boxes? And she'll say, now like you've talked about, my standards are pretty high, but also she's like, I feel like I've dropped some of my standards just a little bit to open up some gray area. Maybe I'm being too rigid in my thought process about what I'm looking for. Who knows? I mean, it could go either way.
Interesting. I connect with that. I think that at times I have been too rigid where, I think like, oh, if he says this on the date, like it's over. Like, for
Yeah.
example, like any type of like cuss word, I'm like, no, I'm out. But
Yeah.
but maybe that's like too rigid, or maybe that is my values. And I've had people ask me that, going like speaking on values, like, well, like your standards are too high. And it's like, but these are things that like are really important to me, like, no one in my family like swears. And so
Yeah.
there's a fine balance of, you know, okay, not everyone's perfect. Like I can't expect somebody to be perfect when I'm not perfect. And
Mhm.
so I do think though that I think the dating scene is a mess. And I think that people are having to come to realize like what is going wrong. And I think something that is missing is the values.
Yeah.
What is your identity rooted in? How are you going to pursue a marriage or pursue me in dating?
Mhm.
How do you treat your family? What are your friends like?
Mhm.
And I think something that has like been taken away, and I don't know if you can speak on this, is I think people date in isolation now more
Oh,
than
wow.
they date communally. So I feel like maybe back then, I don't know if you can affirm this or if this was your experience, but you went on double dates, you met in church, you met at work, and I think you could kind of discern somebody's character because you were around them in these settings where you could see them authentically.
Totally agree.
You
Yes,
could see,
totally agree. If
yeah,
I think back to my relationships that I had before I met my husband, it was very much that. So you could kind of see a bigger picture of the person, instead of like, I don't know how you guys do it with Snapchat. And I know before we hit the record, you talked about that specifically, and you're like, I'm not on it
there's
anymore.
no Snapchat anymore.
Yeah, like it's you like just can't do that. But I hear young girls talking about, he added me on Snap, and so that's how you meet. And you talk about like dating in isolation. That to me takes that even a step further.
Yes.
A very like, one of the questions that I sent you was about connection in the digital age, right? So if we think about that being the norm at this point, then how do you really find out what someone's true, authentic identity is? How do you do that?
It's really difficult. I
Mhm.
think that I think that there are multiple ways that you can go about dating digitally. I know some people who have met their spouse online and it worked out for them and they have healthy marriages and they're very happy. I think that the majority of relationships, I could be wrong, this isn't backed up, but just from what I hear from friends and some experiences that I've seen through my friends, is that you don't necessarily know someone's character. So somebody can act a certain way, and then you spend time with them and you realize this isn't who I thought it was. And I
Right.
think it's also tough to figure out where that person stands with their faith, with their family, because you can kind of curate an image on
Yeah.
social media. Like even with like Instagram, like I'm not on Snapchat, so I can't speak much into that. But I think even on Instagram, people portray themselves a certain way, but what does it actually look like in real life? And I think that's the beauty of meeting somebody in the wild. And I'm not saying it has to be like that. God can work in so many ways. It's not limited to just meeting in the wild. But I think that is one thing that we are missing is that connection piece. And there's an authenticity piece, I feel like, with that. So I would
Yeah.
say that's where I stand in the realm of digital dating.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And like, we don't want to, throw anybody under the bus that has a good experience with that, because I will tell you, I have friends that are in my age group that have raised children, gone through divorce, and are now re-entering a dating situation in their 40s and 50s and saying, "Whoa, like it's ugly out in the wild," you know? And that
That's true.
they have, yeah, well, they've relied on different digital dating apps, which I think have their place dependent upon where you are, what season you are in your life. But if I think about like your age grouping and the newness of meeting someone and the newness of having these wonderful relationships that you're cultivating to hopefully garner in marriage and starting a family and really putting roots down with another person, I really, really believe, and this is my total opinion on this, that authenticity is such a big piece of it. And yes, social media can put out our highlight reels. It does. It just does. I mean, I do. Like, there's times when I'm super messy and I'm like, I can't show up like that. But yet, honestly, if I showed up like that, I probably would have more connection with people if I did it. I mean, being totally blunt, force honest right there. But if we think about it in a romantic standpoint, these are people that you are considering being vulnerable with on multiple levels and sharing parts of your soul, and not knowing what that authenticity is, I think is dangerous. Just me.
Yes, I think it can be dangerous. I think too, when people portray themselves a certain way and you don't know their full story, I think what's really helpful is when you bring people into dating. So I just heard about this. My best friend, she just met her friend's boyfriend. It was six girls at a table at this restaurant, and he was there with them. Only
Okay.
be there. And they were just like vetting him, just saying like, "What's he like?" And I think things like that are so important to do to date communally.
Mhm.
So I guess in regards to the digital sphere, I think I'm more than willing to go like on a date like through a DM that I receive on Instagram or something like that. But um, just sort of like the blindness of not knowing who somebody is, but just like the quick connection, like I'll add this person on Snapchat, I'll add this person, and it's like, what's it based on? I guess that's what I would love to know. Is it based on
Mhm.
looks? Is it based on popularity? Because none of
Mm.
those things are really long standing or last. And so I think that's at times where people can get caught short.
Yeah, and they get caught up in that. What's it based on? That's a great, great comment. You really have to consider what it's based on. And when we're considering our values and how they align and what it is that we're truly looking for in a partner long term, you have to think about those things. I mean, they're important, right? I mean, I think if we talk about the challenges in this dating era, this is probably one of the bigger ones. I mean, from what I hear you saying, and kind of from what I've heard with my daughters as well, do you think there's other challenges that have presented themselves along the way for you?
Yeah, I have this concept and I think it's borrowed from somebody else, but it's called FOBO, which
Oh,
is
wait, FOBO?
FOBO,
Okay.
FOBO. And
Okay.
it's called fear of best option. And
Ooh.
yes, fear of best option. And I think this goes back, its roots are in digital comparison and popularity,
Mhm.
which is that there will always be somebody better. And there will always be somebody better because of your access to social media. And I think that's why, for people my age, it's been used many times to be unhealthy. So I'm not saying that it's, you know, for your friends and, for other people. And some people, like, it really does work and, like,
Mhm.
it's so healthy. But I think at this age, people get caught up in things that just don't matter. They get caught
Totally.
up in, like, is somebody hot? Is somebody popular?
Mm.
And you can be going on great dates with somebody, and then, they open up their phone and they they see somebody and they're like, oh, but she's more beautiful, she's more successful, and they might not even know this person, and
Right.
I'm going to go pursue that. And that's what I think is so hard about this dating and this generation that we live in is people are always looking for something better because that's just a consumer mentality, which I think is so unhealthy in the dating scene. You just want something better and better and better instead of actually looking for a relationship that will sanctify you, that will grow you closer with God, that will develop you and your character. And I think the character piece is missing a lot. I don't think people date so much for character anymore. I'm sure
Yeah.
some do, but I think that's something that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I think we're getting well, and that just brings me to the next question. Do you think that we're getting more back towards, do you think it's starting to swing back towards that traditional dating for character? And by the way, FOBO, I love it. Fear of best option or better option rather. I
Yes,
I mean, that's you should pen that and like trademark that one. It's really, really good.
passionate.
That's it. That's it. Yes.
I do think it is shifting because I think in 2020 I feel like dating just became very different.
Yeah.
I feel like before 2020, I would get really excited for dates. I would be so I remember like getting all dressed up and like I still do that. But there was an excitement about it. And then I think going back to isolation, I think in 2020 everyone was so isolated and there was just a residue that was left like after that where men didn't approach women, women didn't approach men. And I think at times like both parties have said like we don't need the other. Like
Oh, yeah.
women will be like I don't need no man, and men will be like I don't need any woman. And I just think that kind of rhetoric is just not helpful because
Mhm.
that's not true. Men and women were created for each other and we need each other. And I think when we tell ourselves we don't need the other, I just think that that's not true. And I
Mm.
think that now we're starting to see the effects of that, like the loneliness, the prolonged loneliness. And I think people deep down really do want connection and healthy
Mhm.
relationships. And I think people are looking inward, having to realize there's something missing and we don't know what it is. And so I think that I see even like the trad wives are like, it's a thing now on Instagram. Not saying that I want to be a trad wife, but people want to go back to the basics, which are healthy romantic relationships. It's
Mhm.
not these Hollywood, I'm chasing after a feeling because it's obviously not working and it doesn't last. And so I think when your values are based in, something beyond you, for me, it's Jesus.
Mhm.
I think then you can build a healthy relationship because it's not based in something fleeting, it's based in something eternal.
Right, and feelings are that's great. Feelings are so fleeting, and it goes back to that true identity of ours, like, if what are we rooted in terms of our belief and our convictions as a person, to be able to bring that to a relationship, and you know what? It takes vulnerability to reach out. That when go back to the isolation kind of dating that you're talking about in the 2020, like when the world shut down, like golly gee, how do you step back out of that and go, all right, I got very comfortable isolating because a lot of us went to that. I love it. And a lot of us went to this, oh my gosh, it's totally depressing me and making me a person I'm not. And then there's people all the way through the middle of it. But I think we lost something in that shift. I think a large majority of us lost something. And you have to work to get that vulnerability back and that approach back. And I mean, hey, dude, we are wired for connection. We're
Yes.
human beings wired for connection. I mean, the podcast, we state that all the time. You have choice and you're wired for connection. We are here to relate to one another, to be with one another. And I think that, I mean, there's definitely times it takes vulnerability and kind of stepping out on a ledge that you're not comfortable with. Like being uncomfortable for a lot of people is too daunting. It's just too much.
It is. And I hear that from men nowadays. Some of my guy friends, they say that they're so scared to pursue women because they don't want to be rejected.
Oh,
And I
wow.
feel like there's a resilience factor also with women who think like, oh, I don't want to even like go out with him because he's not my type. And so I think
Mhm.
that's where women fall short and men fall short is I don't want to be rejected. And then I don't, I don't feel like we're going to connect. So I'm going to say no and like judging someone beforehand. And I think,
Right.
I don't know if that comes from isolation or fear. I think it could be, the fear of this might not look like what I thought it would, which is something that I struggle with all the time and currently battling is, what if it doesn't look the way that I think it's going to look? And part of
Mhm.
me deep down feels like that could be true, but maybe it's not a bad thing. So I think men and women are different in that way in their perspectives. But I know the fear of being rejected weighs heavily on people. And I think social media, going back to, you know, the digital age that we live in, I think that it's intertwined with that. Like, he didn't follow me back, he ghosted me. I think like there's, collateral, psychological collateral like that, that we, I don't know. I guess you didn't experience that because you weren't being ghosted.
No,
I feel
we
like
didn't have any of that. We had none of that. Like, I think this is totally dating me. I think the internet was brand new. I Oh my gosh, it's like, what is Google? This is amazing. I can do my
yeah,
research project now. This is awesome.
you
Yeah,
had to respond to somebody if they asked you on a date. Like, you couldn't just avoid them
yeah,
or ghost them. But nowadays, because of the internet, you might not ever see this person again. So a lot of people, or men and women, can be like, "See ya," and then
right.
you're ghosted. So
Yeah. I mean, we would have phone calls. There wasn't, I
yes,
mean, and there was voicemail, but there wasn't voicemail. We had these digital little boxes that you could see the caller ID. So you could see, the Meg Maroney song caller, no, caller ID.
yes, I
I can't
love
do
that song. No
Love
caller
that song. It's a
ID.
great one, right?
I love
But
it.
I want to talk a little bit about the rejection piece that you were speaking about because I think I watched a webinar yesterday by an author named Anna Runkle, and she wrote a book called Compatibility. And what she speaks about are the different attachments, personalities that we all tend to fall into. There's like four or five different ones. So, depending upon your background, depending upon your trauma, depending upon all sorts of things, depends on where you fall in that spectrum. But what I really thought was interesting that is, I mean, it's just a foregone conclusion, and every therapist will tell you this is so true. We tend to throw up that flag of rejection first because we don't want to be rejected and we don't want to feel what that feels like to have to go through that and sit in our feelings because then that tests that attachment that we have. And a lot of times, if we have an anxiety kind of attachment or a disorganized attachment, we don't interrelate with people. It's a struggle to interrelate with people in certain ways anyway. So you throw in that someone's rejecting me by either ghosting me or not following me back, or we go out on one date and we don't have any kind of correspondence or any honesty back and forth that, hey, thanks so much, but this just isn't working for me. It's just, there's nothing. And so a lot of times, like, it's just better not to do it in people's minds, or better to say so long without actually owning up to it. If that makes any sense. But like, yeah, in my day and age, like, dude across the way, we swap classes. He's going to walk with me in the hallway and say, hey, after the football game Friday night, you want to go hang? Like, sure. Yeah. I mean, and you're right there. Like,
Yeah,
you got to say something.
yeah.
Like,
There's
who can
no avoiding it.
you can't. Yeah, we didn't have a phone to pull out and go, like this,
Maybe not.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So different. I am excited to hear you say, this gives me some hope that it's kind of going back towards that more traditional, let's let's be authentic, let's kind of do that communal kind of, hey, let's learn about each other instead of, the quick out on the phone kind of thing. And then the phobo, love it, love the phobo. That's a great comment. Great. You also said something about loneliness too, and I want to cross that bridge. Do you believe that people are dating out of loneliness or out of specific curiosity for what that person is or what that could be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I feel like early in my 20s, it was out of curiosity. But I think later in my 20s, it's been out of loneliness.
Hmm.
I know that men and women alike at this age, 28 and older, are feeling the pressure to find somebody.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And I think there's a curiosity with it, but it was kind of like I was saying, before 2020, I think I was 23 when 2020 hit. Yeah, I
Mhm.
was. And before then, I got really excited for dates, and I feel like there was like a freshness to it, and I was genuinely curious about people. But maybe it's just sounds dramatic to say this, but the sting with time, like as time goes on, like it just feels so lonely.
Mhm.
And as I said earlier, I would rather be lonely, and wait for the right thing than just to step into something that's not for me and that's not long lasting. But I think now it's out of loneliness for
Mm.
sure. And I try my best to be curious about somebody, but I feel like that is where I'm at and where I'm struggling right now is I want to be excited. I want to go on a date and feel like it was like early in my 20s when I was just like, this could be something fun. And I think when it doesn't work out for a long time, that's where I've struggled is how do I get excited and kind of like what you were talking about, like not wanting to be rejected. I
Mhm.
think that has been especially hard, like in the last, I would say, like year,
Mhm.
just when things don't work out or you think somebody's interested in you and you see the signs, but then all of a sudden they're dating somebody like
Mm.
soon after, and you're like, man, like, where did I go wrong? Like, thinking, that they were interested in me. So I think, yeah, I would say late 20s, I think it's been out of loneliness.
Yeah, and what I hear you saying is that it's also a life stages kind of thing for you too,
I think
you
so. I
know?
think it is a life stage. And I
Mhm.
think other people feel the same way. Like what I've
Mhm.
heard my friends say is it's out of loneliness now. So,
Yeah, I mean, you have these different experiences in your 20s, like in college and then leaving college and then starting your work, and all the exciting things that you have going on. So there's a lot of different things that are happening for you anyway. And I think also another thing that you said, I mean, I think you really have to battle that self-criticalness and step outside of that and try to tell yourself this has more to do with someone else than it does with me, because
yeah.
someone else can make the choice that they want to make, but as long as I'm strong in my convictions and my identity and where I'm rooted, and it sounds like that's where you're really working to stay, which
Yes.
is admirable. Like it's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It is hard to stay rooted, especially when everyone around you, it seems like it works out for them.
Uh,
And it's been such a joy to watch my friends fall in love and to date and to watch their stories unfold. And it gives me a lot of hope. I think that's the one thing that kind of sustains me is I see the success and the happiness and the joy and the foundations of my friendships
mhm.
and healthy relationships and marriages, and it gives me hope that I can find that. So I think that's one thing that's been sustaining me.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you, because I know we've spoke a lot about frustrations in dating, but what are like the hopefulness? Like that's a great point. And I think that speaks a lot about your character. And I know through the life stages that you've gone through, it's not easy to get to that point where you can objectively look at other people's situations and truly be happy for them. So, and knowing that I know who I am, I know what I feel, and I know what I'm willing to stay for and willing to wait for, right?
Yeah. It was really sweet. It was September 13th. I helped plan my friend's proposal. Her now fiance had reached out to me. They've been doing long distance. He lives in California, she lives in Tennessee, and it took so many planning steps to get her to this park that he wanted to propose at, and she had no idea.
Oh,
And there was one point where I have this outfit ready for her and we meet in the parking lot, and I had like told her to meet me at the park. I was like, I've just had such a hard day. Like, please just meet me at the park.
oh no.
And I think she just had come from floating the river. So she's like in her swimsuit, like
Oh
isn't
no.
isn't wearing makeup.
Yeah.
And she was not supposed to be floating the river that day. It just that's how it panned out. And so I had like her makeup bag, her hair accessories, an outfit picked out for her. And it was in this car, and I was like, "Hey, you need to put this on." And she finally realized it. She had no idea. She's like, you and my fiance will never get me. Like, you'll never surprise me. Like, there's no way. Like, I'll see it before anyone sees it. And it was just the sweetest thing because we got her. She was so surprised. And that look in her eyes, and like her eyes just started to well up with tears. And she's like, is it happening? And I was like, it's happening.
Oh, I just got chills when you were saying that.
I just,
Delightful.
it, and like, and we were like getting ready in the bathroom at this park, and it was so chaotic because she knew it was about to happen. And so like I'm brushing her hair, and she's putting makeup on, and she has this cute outfit on after she just floated the river.
Floated the river.
She's floated the river. Yeah, there's no way she could have seen it coming. And I was trying to envision it from her perspective and how excited she was, and just the honor of being like with a friend in a moment like that. And we then were like running through the forest to her engagement, and the sun is setting, and it was just like the colors were so vibrant. I walked this park so many times, and I like just running to her engagement, like she was running to her fiance. And there was just something so beautiful about that moment where I think, this will happen for me like someday. And yes, like it's taken a really long time to get there, and it hasn't. If you asked me when I was 20, like what age I would have been married at, I think I would have told you like 24 and I'll have my first baby by 26, which is like so laughable. Yes, so laughable now.
Well, I think it's like we take it to a God standpoint. Like we make our plans, but God laughs at them. It's like,
yes. And honestly, looking back, yes, I'm disappointed, but I'm also so grateful because the person that I've become the last 3 years is so different than the person that I'm becoming is the person that I would want a guy to see. And if you met me 3 years ago, yes, I'd still be great, but there are certain things that have developed me in this last year that, just even in this last year that, are long-standing character developments and growth. And I think that we should all embrace suffering and just the loneliness that comes with dating, because I think a lot of times people try and avoid it. They seek out, a Snapchat snap, or they seek out talking to somebody on Instagram or posting something on their story so that someone looks, or just lots of flings and dates. But I think that when you can just sit in loneliness, and this has been my story, which is very unusual, but like I will not just message any guy. Like I will only message a guy who I'm going on a date with, because I just care about preserving my peace so much. And so there's so many nights where I've gone to bed so sad, so lonely, crying, disappointed, and it sucks. There's no way to say that it doesn't, but I would rather embrace every single morsel and feeling of that disappointment, knowing that someday, like, there will be a man that comes along and it will all be worth the wait.
Yeah.
Because love takes time.
I love all of that. It's so insightful, and it's very mature of you to have gotten to that point. And also suffering is a big thing. And it's something that we don't really we don't want to sit in our stuff. So bravo to you for sitting in your stuff. Because I think too, it gives us a piece of, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. It really teaches us a lot about ourselves. And you're in a huge growth period in your 20s. I remember all the shifts that I went through in my 20s, even before I got married and even after I got married, and then started, having children. But it was it's a very interesting up and down, back and forth, figuring out who you really are time frame. And I love what you said about needing to be the fullest version basically of yourself. To bring that to a relationship is super important. And look at you doing that work. I don't know that a lot of people are comfortable doing that work. And being comfortable in the uncomfortable takes a lot of oomph. You know what I'm saying? But tell me about what your last relationships have taught you about where you are now. Like what I heard you say is that through these years of dating in your 20s that you've learned so much about yourself and the different things that you are not willing to compromise because you know that it's worth it on the other side of it for what you were experiencing with your friend, right? And what's is waiting for you. And there's a big piece of faith and trust that has to go along with that too to make everything line up, which brings me to a whole other question is the alignment of relationships. Do you feel like there's a certain alignment to relationships, or do you feel like it can just I mean, is that reality? Is it reality that the moon and stars are going to line up for all of us?
I know what you're asking. I do I do think that timing plays a big part of dating and when you meet somebody, and that has always been something I've struggled with. Like the word time, I hate that word. I
Yeah.
hate like
You'll
hate
just throw that word out for the next bit. It's gone.
it's gone.
Yep.
We're not going to look at it, talk about it.
No more.
Time has been something I've really struggled with because there's that saying that right person, wrong time. And
Oh gosh.
and
My heart breaks.
for
Yes.
years, for years, that phrase just hurt so bad. And
Yeah.
then I think it's Ben Stewart. He wrote Single, Dating, Engaged, Married. And there's a line in there and it says, the right person at the wrong time is still the wrong person.
Oh God, Annalie.
And it gave me so much clarity that we've just convinced ourselves like it was the right person. It was just the wrong time. And it's like, if it was the wrong time, then it was actually the wrong person. And
That's a gut check right there, right?
yes, and that sentence like relieved so much stress. And I think that that has been something I've struggled with. Like, well, maybe if, so and so would have just met me now when, I'm more mature, then it would have worked out. Or maybe, if I had just met him like 2 months earlier, this would have worked out before he met somebody else. And I think when you kind of do the mental gymnastics, it causes so much anxiety. And I
Yes.
think that's what I did, going back to your question, in past relationships where I would date out of the fear of loneliness, just to be transparent. I don't have this stacked resume of dating people. I've had two relationships that were pretty short. One was 3 months and another was 6 or 7 months. And I think in both those situations, my last relationship was almost 4 years ago. It was out of loneliness that I dated because I felt like I was behind. I felt I really wanted to be married and I still want to be married.
Mhm.
And without really like knowing someone's character, just jumped into a relationship, not really understanding, yes, you say that you have the same values, but do you live them out? Because I think that's where
Mhm.
I've fallen in the trap is it's really easy, I think, for people to say, yes, I love the Lord. Yes, I value family. Yes, that I value your independence and supporting you. But then when the time comes and you don't find that support, you're kind of like, well, you said that you value these things, but then you don't show it. And so I think that's something that I look for now is words don't mean anything.
Mm.
Actions do. And
Walking the walk. Can you
yes,
walk the walk? And that applies to both men and women. Like we're not like singling out one
no,
gender or another.
women can do that
It's
too.
yeah, totally, totally. Let's talk a little bit about because I know you talked about comparison along the way too, right? And in that I think that kind of goes along with phobo too, because phobo, right, to coin that term, is it promotes comparison. And if we
Yes.
are looking for the next right thing, then we're usually looking at something totally external that doesn't have any depth to it. And then we tend to go down the mental gymnastics. I love that term too. We do all the mental gymnastics about how do we make this work? Why is this not working? Why is
Mhm.
it happening like this? Why doesn't he snap me back quicker? Why is he not snapping me back? Da, 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 all the things. So let's talk genuine connection versus surface connection or chemistry versus compatibility. Like there's a lot of different comparisons, and speaking of comparisons right there, that we can go down. But let's talk first a little bit about genuine connection versus surface connection. How do you know from your experience in the dating era where we are now, when someone is really plugged in to learning who you are versus I'm just here because it's a date and I think you're cute and I don't really know where this is going to go. Kind of more flippant.
I think when people ask questions and the questions they ask, it's very revealing. I think if you're constantly talking about yourself and not wanting or desiring to learn about somebody else, I think that's revealing that
Okay.
maybe you're focusing more on, does she like me? And I think that's something my friends and I have over the years like had to check is, instead of coming back from a date being like, oh, he likes me so much. Yes, that might be true, but focusing on what do you actually like about the guy you're going on a date with. So
Yeah.
even if that's true, like I would rather hear about what do you like about this guy rather than, oh, he makes me feel this way. And I really appreciate it. And I think anyone does. When
Mm.
people ask sincere questions, what's your family like? What are your passions and aspirations? What dreams has God put in your heart? Do you want to have kids someday? I don't
Yeah.
know. But long term, I think too, I know this is like a really strange theory and concept that I have, but I want to fall in love backwards. And
Okay.
what I mean by that is I think people look at people today and they going back to phobo, they just want to know, are you hot? Like, are you popular? And these very surface things that will fade away for sure. It's not a question on if they will, they will.
Yes,
And,
totally. Totally.
and I've heard that in marriage, there's three different stages that you go through. You go through lovers, you go through teammates as parents, and then at the very end, you're each other's caretakers.
Mm.
And I would rather fall in love backwards and think of, can somebody take care of me? If something happens tomorrow and I get seriously ill, is somebody going to be able to take care of me? Are they a good teammate? Could we, go on a road trip together and navigate conflict? Could we, go through something really difficult together as teammates and support each other? Because anyone can do phase one, which is be lovers. I think
Totally.
that's the easiest part.
Mhm.
And I know that's a strange way to look at love,
Not
but
at all.
I think
Not at all. I think it's refreshing, and I think it's really, really mature, but I think it's very sound as well. It just to me, and maybe I'm looking at it from a 50-year-old pair of sunglasses here or something, but I'm just gonna tell you that from where I sit, that makes, in my experience in being married for over 20 years, it's totally yes, yes, 100% yes. Dating backwards, caretakers, then teammates, then lovers, because it all absolutely, that makes complete sense. Yeah.
and I think I always dated from the perspective of I just want the feelings. Like I just want it to be it's very interesting. When I was thinking about this podcast and this interview, I was thinking about what do I really want like out of a dating relationship? And there was just one word that came to my mind, and it was redemption. And I think that even
Mm.
goes back to comparison is I think when you've been chronically single for such a long time, there comes a point where I won't settle. So it has to actually be really, really great because I won't settle. And there has to be this redemptive factor. And so, especially early on in my 20s, I was disheartened back then, which is hilarious because I was 21 being like,
Yeah.
oh no. But also I will say moving to the South was so interesting in that when I was in college, people were getting engaged and married.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind. It was a cultural shock. And it still isn't something I've fully processed, even living in Tennessee for 9 years now. I'm like, oh my gosh, people are getting married at 22.
Yeah.
And so that prompted me to imitate the culture around me And I don't know if that's something that people feel pressured to do, but I think
Mhm.
that's how I wanted to date, was I wanted to fit in like everyone else. And I'm really glad that God just didn't allow that. There's always been something inside of me where when there's a short beginning, there's just such a lack of peace, and I know this isn't it.
Yeah.
And I think now, with talking about comparison, I that has been something that has been challenging. Is I know I'm not going to settle, but then online you see beautiful girls and, beautiful in beautiful clothes and lots of followers, and you think like, man, like, where do I fit in? If
Mm.
there's a guy that I like, maybe he's going to go for her because she's prettier, she has nicer clothes, she's more successful, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And so I think that that's also been a battle, just to be transparent,
Yeah.
that I've struggled with,
Well,
especially.
I don't know, honestly, if comparison isn't a battle for all of us, on whatever season of life that we're in. I
Mhm.
mean, being absolutely 100% transparent about that, I think that that's always something that we have to kind of put in perspective, depending upon how it's affecting us, how we are reacting to it, how we are internalizing it, or how we're choosing to move through it, because comparison is always going to happen. It's always going to be there. I think that your perspective is really founded in some deep experience along the way, and a lot of thought process that you've had to go through about where you are with it, what you are with it, how that really looks in your life, and what that means for you, and what you're willing to wait for, what your convictions really, really are. Um, do you, this is kind of just on a side note, like, if you look at the dating situation now, is there anything, because I look at you and think, I think more traditional dating for you. You know what I'm saying? I feel like you're very grounded in that way. Maybe it's your maturity as well, but I just want to ask you, in the dating landscape that you're in right now, is there anything that just makes you shake your head and go, "Oh my gosh, what? What is happening? Like, why?" Or, "Are you kidding me?" How is that real? I mean,
Yeah.
anything.
Yes, there's something I can think of. It personally has never happened to me, but I've heard it happen to a handful of women, and it does make me shake my head at the end of a date when a guy says, "Can we split the check?" Yeah.
Oh,
No. So,
no.
so, so awful.
No.
If that happened to me, I think I would actually just say no, and I'd probably just get
It's
up.
just like, "No, period, and we probably need to just move on right now."
Yeah, I think I'd just be like, "No," and I'd probably just get up and, like, leave. I don't even know what I would,
How you'd
like,
react, yeah.
yeah, I don't even know what I would say at that point. Thankfully, like, all the dates that I've gone on in my life have really been just great men, and
Yeah,
yeah, there's been some that haven't been great, but every guy has always paid for me, and
yeah.
I cannot even, like, fathom
Right?
what I would do. And I think that also goes, like, into the hyper independence now in dating, like, this is your money, this is your stuff, we're gonna split. And I just think that's so bizarre and
Yeah.
strange. And I think that men should pay for women's dates.
Well, I think that's coming back to that traditional center line, you know what I'm saying? Because that was when I was dating, it was never a question. It
No.
was like, if a man asked me out on a date, he was he planned the date. He may
Mm,
ask me, "Hey, where do you like to go to eat?" Or, "Hey, what do you think about this? I'm thinking about, I really like this." So, like, for input, as totally a different
yeah,
story than, but he would plan it.
yeah,
He would pick me up. He would, I mean, he would even call before, "Hey, just making sure we're still good. Hey, I'm on my way," or, "I'll be there in about 30 minutes, just giving you a heads up." I mean, all the different things. But I also think that I probably was raised in a place where it was, I don't know, like, I, I have girls, so I don't have boys, so I can't really say to that factor of raising young men and saying these are the ideals that I think you need to be passing down and doing when you're on a date. And then again, like I have had teenagers, like, and we've all been teenagers. I didn't want to listen to my mom or dad when I was a teenager and somebody telling me that. But I think I had that gift of growing up in a space in the country where it was just kind of an understood thing. And it was also in the time, I guess, when it was more of that traditional kind of thing. Let's talk intention and spirituality in today's culture of dating. Let's talk a little bit about what that looks like when men are convicted with their intentions and about what it is. Are they good about speaking that? Are they good about living that? Have you seen this demographic that you're existing in right now having that ability to do that? Or do we feel like we're still kind of in that hide behind the phone and what's more comfortable and how that all looks?
I think going back to age, I think it's an age difference. When you get older, you have to wrestle with, why am I still single? Why isn't it worked out? And it genuinely could be just God's timing. Like, I think for me, like, that's been my situation.
Mhm.
Haven't ever had like a wild past or a storm where I made tons of mistakes. Like, I'm a very flawed human, don't get me
Mhm.
wrong. But, if you look at my quote unquote resume, it's like, oh man, like, why is she single? Like, did something happen? And that's not necessarily it. I think it's just God's timing. And so I think the older you get, you have to, though, ask yourself, like, like, why am I single? And I think it forces you to have to be intentional. You have to be thoughtful about who you're dating, because most people want a relationship. They want families, they want kids.
Mhm.
And so I've really appreciated it when a man can come along and state his intentions. There's, saying like, we should hang out. No, say, let's go on a date. Clarify
Yes.
clarify what this is.
Yeah.
Don't leave me wondering, wait, what is this? And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up in the friendships, the situationships. And so that's why too I try and like stay off my phone as much as possible when it comes to dating. I
Mhm.
think we had talked about phone calls earlier, how your husband now would call you, and I think that's so important, is to talk to people. I think that's more intentional than just a text like, hey, how's your day? I mean, that's how my dad pursued my mom. Was, I think it was for a year. Every day when my parents got off of work, my dad would call my mom every day, and they would talk on the
Oh,
phone for an hour, hours. And I think about, when I'm trying to wrestle, like, is this a guy I want to date? I think about, is he intentionally pursuing me? Is there clarity? And I think I've said it before, and this is not my phrase, but being clear is being kind. I think I read that in a book somewhere, or maybe heard it on a podcast. But if you're being clear, you're being kind. And that
mm,
even comes with rejection. When something doesn't work out, I'm not feeling a certain way, I can say, hey, I really love going on a date with you, but I'm not feeling a connection. I wish you the best and believe God has the best for you. That's being kind. And I think that's so much better than ghosting. Like, people I think my age don't want to feel uncomfortable.
yeah, I agree.
I
Yeah.
think that's the
People my age don't want to feel uncomfortable.
that's true. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I think then that goes back to suffering and the the world we live in. We want to feel so much comfort. We don't want to feel rejected. We don't want to feel, vulnerable and have these emotions in dating. We just want to feel confident,
Mm.
loved, full, happy all the time. And that's just not what relationships are about, which goes
Yeah.
back to my theory of falling in love backwards. Is I want the hard feelings. I want the difficult conversations and the depth and the roots to be deep. I want, when the storm comes, I want to be rooted in, my identity and in my character, because character is the one thing. I read this in my Bible. I made this note in 2020. And I was reading Job, and it said, character is the one thing that's timeless. It withstands time. And I think that's what Job had. I think that's, when you think of someone who really went through horrible suffering, that's
Yeah.
that's what I think about, is character stands the test of time. And
Yes.
it was really sweet finding that in my Bible. And So I think that's what I'm looking for. And I think that's what is something that you'll never go wrong. Like when you're dating, that's
Mm.
something that you will always find fruitfulness in.
Yeah, being clear is kind.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. That's a great,
It's
great
that
phrase.
simple.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And the character, like character is the one thing that withstands time. It really is. And I was actually just having this conversation with my husband the other day about something completely trivial that we were arguing about. And I was like, I like stop making an assumption that this is how I feel about this. You can ask me specifically how I feel about this, and I'm willing to share it with you. But what you're doing is walking away assuming that this is what I'm going to say, this is how I'm going to feel, instead of being clear. And it's not that we weren't being kind or being very direct. I mean, we've known each other for 30 plus years, right? But it's also it's nonstop. You know, I mean, if you meet somebody and you're on your first date, let's establish that. Let's be comfortable enough in ourselves that we can be clear in our intentions, like you talked about, be clear in our delivery, and present that character knowing that this is who I am, this is where I sit, this is where I stand. I just want to say, you sitting with that information for you, like it's the God's timing thing is such a big deal, and it's such a hard thing. And I don't see a lot of young professionals being able to do that in a way that, I'm not going to say that it's not complicated, not difficult, not challenging, because you already presented that and talked about that for you. But I also just want to say that I think it's really, so it speaks wildly to your character being very, very steadfast in your beliefs, steadfast in your faith, and steadfast in your identity for what you can bring to a relationship. And I think that the dating backwards is so beautiful. I just really, as a 20 plus year marriage going on here, I could not agree more. I think that's a really wonderful perspective and a really great goal to have. It makes total sense to me based on where I'm at. Total sense to me.
Yeah, that's so kind.
So it looks to me like if we talked about what a healthy, aligned partnership looks like for you,
Mhm.
right? First of all, we're talking faith. We're also talking intentional. We're talking character. Is there anything else we can add to that for you?
I have something I call the Christmas test.
Wait, the Christmas test?
The
You
Christ-
are like dropping bombs today. Your 28-year-old wonderful brain is like throwing this great stuff out there. Okay.
Yes, it's called the Christmas test, which is about 3 years ago. I was with my family. They live in Franklin, and they live out in the country, and they have like a little farm, some land. It's really fun out there, but in winter, and maybe this is true about even urban areas, but their pipes freeze like no one's business.
Yeah, it definitely happened. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if I've never had my pipes frozen here
Yeah.
in Nashville. So I don't know if it's because they live out on some land, but the pipes froze. And for, I think it was about a week, like we did not have running water. Maybe I'm being dramatic. Maybe it was more like 3 days. It was
That's long enough. 3 days is long enough.
three,
Yeah.
3 days will feel like a week.
Yeah.
And so it's just my parents and my brother, who's a year and a half younger than me, just sitting with each other for 3 days with nothing to do. The driveway's like so icy, so we're not leaving. And I remember sitting by the fire thinking, thank God I'm not married right now. Like, I can't even imagine having a husband like here right now with like frozen pipes, just like my brother's like getting stir crazy. He's like, I need to go out. I need to go out. My parents are like trying to do something fun, like, let's do
Yeah.
a puzzle. I just want to sit by the fire. My brother's just, but then I actually thought about it and I was like, you know what? There's going to be situations like this that happen in life. Much worse too, I'm sure. Like not in a bad way, but there are hard times that will come. And can you just hang out with someone? And so at times when I've gone on dates with men, I think about the Christmas test. I'm like, if could you sit with my parents and my brother for 3 days straight with frozen bites. Like, could we just hang out and have fun?
Yeah.
And there have just been times where I was on a date and I just know I'm like, there's
This
no
is
way.
not going down the Christmas test way that I
No,
want it
I
to.
was like, I don't think you're gonna pass the Christmas test, you know? I said it at the beginning, like, I was like, "Oh, yeah, like, one of my red flags is, like, swearing," so when a guy's, like, swearing on a date, I'm like, "Oh, man, like, if you're like, you wouldn't pass the Christmas test if you're,
If you're
just
already doing this.
yeah, if you're just hanging out," and
Yeah.
there's no judgment for people who swear. That's just, like, one of my values.
Right, right.
My parents don't, and there's the sweetest people ever. And so I think when I think about the future and I think about dating, I think about, can you just hang out with somebody?
Mm.
Because that's what the majority of marriage is. It's not these fancy dates. It's not these high feelings. It's, can you just hang out with somebody? And so one thing that I've developed, I would say, like in this time of being single, is just appreciating the life and the creation that like God has given around us. So yes, going back to also what you said, like I'm very traditional when it comes to dating. Like I love like going on a date and watching clouds, like just putting out a picnic blanket and like watching the clouds, or
Oh,
like going to the park and blowing bubbles. I do that with my friends. And yeah, maybe that sounds really childish, but there's actually so much joy in that. I'm looking out at my bedroom window and I just envision in January, my best friend and my roommate, she got me a red sled for Christmas. And our street outside is it's a hill, and so when it freezes over, it has just the best sledding. And
okay.
I think about just like the fun adventure of like that, and like that's what I want like in my marriage is every day is so ordinary. Like there's a song called Tuesdays, I think by Jake Scott, or maybe that's not his name, but there's a song called Tuesdays for sure, and it's about how life is very ordinary, and
Yeah.
you can make it extraordinary though with little things, and like that's what I want for my marriage. And I think at times like people think that it has to be this extraordinary, lavishing dates, this, mega feelings, but it's actually just this very humble, meek, beautiful, extraordinary in the normal days.
Right. Can you exist in the ordinary?
Yes. Can you pass
Yes.
the Christmas test?
And can you pass the Christmas test? That's amazing. I'm going to tell you something like when you're in the thick of it and you have two children and one of them is cutting teeth and the other one is sick and you haven't slept in 4 days and both of you have to try to get up for work the next day and you're fighting with one another at 3 a.m. going, who's going to take care of this one? Who's going to take care of this one? And
Yeah.
you like function on 3 hours of sleep. That's the ordinary. That's that phase. That's the ordinary in that phase. But then you come out from underneath that and your children get well and they're at school or you're at work and you have a date night and you go, this is amazing. So it's a balance. It's a check and balance. And can you exist in the gray area and be
Yeah.
happy in the ordinary? I don't think what you're talking about is childish, the things that you like to do. I think it's very grounding. And I think it's kind of gets back to your roots of like just being present. And I think we miss being present. And if we talk about like being on a date, how hard is it to be present with somebody when you're with them instead of thinking, okay, I wonder what they're thinking about this. Okay, I wonder what's going to happen next. Okay, do you think we're going to have another date? Like, how do you stay present in the moment when you're dating somebody, when you're on a first date, when you're on a second date, when all of that is happening? Like, what does that look like to be present? Can you be present?
It's something I struggle with so much. I wish I could say that I do a great job and I'm just not in my head. And it's gotten significantly better, but I even think about how I went on a date about a month ago and we were on a walk and I remember thinking like, oh, is this path shorter? Like, is he having a good time? Like, which
Wow.
path are we like walking down? And just like the overthinking about that, and then just overthinking the hug at the end. It's so
Mhm.
embarrassing. I have a frozen shoulder right now. I have to get physical therapy for it. But when this date happened, I could hardly like lift my arm.
Oh my.
So when he went to give me a hug, I I couldn't like lift my arm up, and now it's like significantly better. I got a cortisone
Okay.
shot, physical
Okay.
therapy, so I can lift it now.
Yeah.
But like I just like awkwardly put my hand on his chest, and he like wrapped his arms around me, and I just like, oh, I spiraled. I like texted all
Oh.
my friends. I was like, you guys, I gave the worst hug. It was so bad. Like, I bet there's not going to be a second date. And just, I think those things, and they're so small. And I'm sure God is honestly probably like, Annalie, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's probably funny to him. But those are the things that I get nervous about and I get
Right.
anxious about and I overthink and yes, it's always in the back of my mind. And I know my friends say this too. You know, we think like, is there going to be a second date? And
Yeah.
almost this hyper awareness, which I actually don't think is healthy. I've always been very proud of like, maybe proud's not the word, but I've always really cared about being aware, like, you know, how am I acting? Am I asking enough questions? But now it's to the point where I'm hyper aware to the point where I'm like criticizing myself on the date. And then I
Mm.
feel like I actually can't be myself. And it's something that I am aware of. And so I have to work on that. But I also think too, like things like that with like the awkward hug, like the one-handed hug, like I think, I think you'll look back and you'll actually laugh and be
Yeah.
like,
I
that's
mean, I'm
hilarious.
not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you because I've had so many of those situations where I have gone, because that's one thing that is timeless through dating. Okay. Like that is a timeless situation. I don't think that's probably going to end anytime soon. But what will end it, or what will turn that volume down, is our choice to go, I don't need to be so self-critical of myself. It just is what it is. This is who I am. This is where I was at the time. And I was doing the best that I could.
Yes, and it'll be funny. I think that God has a sense of humor, so I think that's why it says in the Bible 365 times, like, do not be afraid, you know, do
Oh,
not be anxious. Is when I look back at things in my life, relationships that didn't work out, I literally am like, thank you, Jesus, that didn't
yeah.
work out
Yeah.
because I wasn't ready. There's no way that could have lasted. And then some things are just downright funny. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, that's hilarious that this happened, and
That
so
I thought this was going that really, this is the direction that
yeah.
I thought it needed to go? Yeah.
Yes, or just new experiences, and so I think now, like, truly within the last, like, probably 3 months over this summer, I finally am in a place where my life has not gone the way that I wanted it to, and that's okay. And
Mm.
I think that there's a beauty in also not knowing how your life is gonna go and embracing all the pain, all the joy. I think about like that moment with my, you know, close friend sledding outside of our apartment would have never happened if I was dating somebody or married, and you know, blowing bubbles in the park with my friend, or just even the time spent with God, where I go to this park down the street from me, and I've gone to that park so many times and prayed, you know, for my husband, for just my future, and I watch the clouds, and I think like one day, like I will bring a kid here. I will bring my husband here.
Oh,
And
that makes me tear up, Annalie. I love that. Oh, look at me, I'm gonna cry. So
okay.
sweet.
And so now I'm at a point where it's like I wouldn't change any of that stuff, because you also have to become your best friend before you can have another best friend, like a husband. And so my word this year, it sounds so cheesy. You know how people say like my word of this year is something.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
My word was whole. And
Oh, okay.
I was really confused. I was like, whole? Like, what does that mean? Like,
No, let's clarify, not HOLE, but WHOLE,
WHOLE, like
wholeness
from
of
whole.
yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
coming into the fullness and like wholeness of my soul. And I think that's where I'm at now, is I find myself whole, not because I like my circumstances. I don't like my circumstances.
Mhm.
I'm very single, and life has not gone the way that I wanted it to, but I am I'm content with the path that God has for me, even though I can't see the end.
That's beautiful. And 365 times for 365 days out of the year. So one time a day. Do not be afraid.
31 proverbs for 30 or 31 days a month.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, to me, there's no accidents. I
Mhm.
am just telling you. I can't tell you how delightful this conversation has been, Annalie. I am so, so, so glad that you said, yeah, I'd love to come on and talk about this whole thing called dating, because it just opened up so many wonderful viewpoints. And I'm hopeful that so many people can hear those viewpoints. Let's go Christmas chess. Let's go Phobo. Let's go being clear is being kind. I mean, so many wonderful, wonderful tidbits about keeping perspective in a world where we don't know the answers and we really want to know what that is, but we can't always know what that is. And how does that look? And how do we interact? How do we interrelate when we know that we can't control the outcome? And what do we do with creating this best possible version of ourselves to create, so we're ready for that creation of that relationship when it approaches us, and so we're there. And you know what, and another thing, sitting in your stuff, sitting in your stuff and understanding that it's a season. I always tell that to my kids. It's like, you may be like the birthday party that was so fun when you were 8 years old and how exciting that was. It ended, and how sad it was when it ended. But here's the significant thing that we have to keep in context. The stuff that we struggle with will end as well. Like, that does come to an ending.
That's
And
so good.
if we can sit with that long enough to go, all right, I'm just going to allow myself to be with it. I'm going to allow the lessons to come through that need to be heard for me. And like every morning I ask God to, hey, what is your to-do list today? Like, I got a to-do list on my phone, and I will loosely look at it, but I need to know what's the overriding, what's the priority today? What's the priority to-do list? Right. And sometimes I don't like the priorities that come through, but I also know that in the end, it's been a benefit to my character and to my relationships and to how it is that I move through this world and the communities that I serve. So it's just trusting and having that faith. And I am so, so, so thankful for you sharing the big pieces of yourself. Thank you. You're so vulnerable today.
Of
And
course.
that's, yeah, it's wonderful. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me share my story and my soul. It's been so lovely getting to even hear how you dated and your story and your daughters, and how this isn't something to fear. Like, there's beauty in the mystery of dating and men pursuing women, and women accepting that pursuit. And so, yeah, I think my hope for anyone listening is just to embrace the mystery and God's plan for your life, because He's made everything beautiful in its time. He's placed eternity in the human heart. No one can fathom what He's done from beginning to end, but He has a plan.
Oh, I couldn't have said it better. Thank you so much. We are leaving on that note. That was wonderful. Thank you
Thank
so, so, so
you.
much.
This has
Yeah,
been
and
so
can
lovely.
we have coffee sometime
Yes,
and we can sit and chat more, because I would love to spend more time with you. You're delightful.
yes, absolutely. You're delightful as well.
Oh, thank you, honey. Have a wonderful rest of your night, okay?
You too. Talk
Thank
soon.
you.